She arrived without a word. No introduction, no handshake, no small talk, just a quiet presence that made everyone stop and wonder who she was or what she had seen. They called her the Mute Girl. No one knew her story, not the instructors, not the other recruits. All they knew was that she didn't speak, not a single word from the day she stepped into the sealed training compound. Among the shouting, the roaring commands, and the chaos of discipline, she stood out, not for her strength, but for her silence. While others barked orders, she simply nodded. While others complained about pain, she just kept moving, quietly, efficiently, like a ghost among men. The recruits laughed at first. "How's a mute supposed to survive Hell Week?" one Marine smirked. "She won't last a day," another chuckled. But she didn't flinch, didn't roll her eyes, didn't even acknowledge them. Instead, she tied her boots tighter and ran another mile. Her name was Evelyn Cross, but most only knew her by her call sign, Echo, a name she didn't choose, but one that stuck, ironic for someone who rarely made a sound. Behind those calm gray eyes was a storm she'd spent years containing, a past written in shadows and blood, and a secret that, if revealed, would silence the entire camp. Years ago, Evelyn was part of something that never made it to the record books, a classified mission that went dark, a night that left half her team dead, her throat torn, and her voice gone. Medics said she'd never speak again. Psychologists said she'd never fight again, but Evelyn had other plans. The silence became her weapon. Every day she trained harder, reading lips, learning signals, moving with precision so sharp that words were unnecessary. She didn't just want to return, she wanted to disappear and rebuild stronger, unseen, unheard, unstoppable. At the base cafeteria one morning, a loud voice broke the chatter. "Hey, Echo! Forgot how to talk again? Or you just scared of real soldiers?" The room burst into laughter. She paused, eyes still, face unreadable, then quietly walked away. To them, it was weakness. To the commander watching from across the room, it was something else. He'd seen that look before, calm under fire, the kind of composure that only comes from someone who's already lived through hell. By the second week, everything began to shift. While others gasped for breath, Evelyn moved faster, sharper, more precise. Her body responded before commands were even given. She memorized drills before they were taught. The instructors began whispering, wondering if she was just lucky or lethal. Then came the combat drill. Each trainee was paired with a Marine. Evelyn was matched with Sergeant Mason, 6'3", 2 tours in Afghanistan, built like a tank. The recruits circled around, smirking. "This'll be over in 5 seconds," one shouted. "Hope she brought a medic," another laughed. The whistle blew. The rain was falling hard. Mason lunged first, a wide swing meant to scare her. She ducked, fast, too fast. He missed. Before he could reset, he spun behind him, swept his legs, and pinned him flat on the ground. 3 seconds, no sound, no emotion, no wasted movement. The laughter died. The instructor froze. Mason stayed on the ground, eyes wide, trying to process what just happened. Evelyn stood over him, silent as ever, rain dripping down her face. No smirk, no satisfaction, just calm. They had no idea what just hit them. And this was only the beginning, because Evelyn Cross, the mute girl they laughed at, was about to show them all what silence could do. The days that followed were different. The laughter stopped, the jokes faded, and the camp began to whisper her name like a secret. Evelyn Cross, the girl who never spoke, who moved like wind, who dropped a Marine twice her size without breaking a sweat. Some called it luck, others called it instinct, but the commander knew it was something else, something they couldn't quite put into words. During evening drills, she ran in silence, boots striking the dirt in perfect rhythm. The other recruits panted and cursed, but she never slowed, never stumbled. When the instructors shouted, she didn't need to hear every word. She just watched, understood, and obeyed. Every movement was precise, like muscle memory carved into her bones. At night, when the barracks went quiet, Evelyn would sit alone by her bunk, her fingers tracing faint scars on her throat. The lights flickered, the air smelled of sweat and metal, and the muffled laughter of the others echoed in the distance. She didn't mind. Solitude had become her only comfort. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to finish what life had stolen from her. One evening, as rain lashed against the tin roof, the commander, Lieutenant Briggs, entered the hall. He was a man of few words, respected and feared in equal measure. His eyes lingered on Evelyn for a long moment. Something about her presence unsettled him, not because she was silent, but because she was too calm, too composed, like a soldier who had already seen the end of the world and come back. Later that night, Briggs opened her file in his office. The documents were incomplete, redacted lines covering entire paragraphs, medical reports missing, service history classified. Only a single note at the bottom stood out in bold type. Deployed under Operation Serpentide, status unknown. Briggs frowned. He'd heard the name once before, a mission buried so deep that even the Pentagon had stopped mentioning it. The next morning, training intensified. Evelyn was put through endurance tests meant to break even the toughest recruits. Freezing ocean swims, weighted runs, endless push-ups on wet sand. She never quit, not once. The others began to notice something strange. She never seemed to tire. Her breathing remained steady, her movements fluid, her eyes focused. She wasn't competing with them. She was fighting something invisible, something within herself. During a close-quarters combat exercise, she was paired again, this time with 2 Marines. They wanted payback from Mason. They came at her hard, laughing as they circled. She didn't move at first, just stood there, her hands low, her face unreadable. Then, in a blur, she stepped forward, deflected one blow, elbowed the second, and twisted out of their reach. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. Both Marines hit the mat. Silence fell over the training ground. One of the instructors approached her afterwards, shaking his head. "Where'd you learn that?" he muttered. Evelyn just stared back, eyes cold but not angry, then turned and walked away. It wasn't arrogance. It was restraint. She'd promised herself never to lose control again, not after what happened on that night. That night. It haunted her even in sleep. In her dreams she was back in the jungle, humid air thick with gunpowder and blood. Her unit had gone in for extraction, but the mission was compromised. Shots rang out from the trees, screams, fire, and then the explosion. She remembered the heat, the flash, and the burning pain in her throat as she crawled through the dirt to drag a wounded comrade out. The radio was dead. Her voice was gone, but she kept moving, always moving. The memory jolted her awake. Sweat clung to her skin. Around her, the barracks were quiet. She slipped out into the cold night, standing under the moonlight, breathing slow, steady breaths. For a moment the silence felt heavy, but it was hers. It was the only thing she could control. Briggs saw her from a distance. He'd followed her routine for days now, studying her movements, watching how she isolated herself from the rest. He could tell she wasn't just another recruit. She was trained, refined, shaped by something beyond the standard SEAL programs, and that bothered him. No one becomes that good without a reason. The next morning, he called her into his office. She stood at attention, silent as ever. He spoke slowly, trying to read her. "You've got talent, Cross, but there's something you're not telling us. You've seen combat before, haven't you?" She didn't respond, just held his gaze, calm, unflinching. He sighed. "You don't have to speak, but I'll find out who you really are." After she left, Briggs made a secure call to an old contact in intelligence. "I need a file reopened," he said quietly. "Operation Serpentide. And I need everything on Evelyn Cross." Meanwhile, word of her ability spread through the base. Some respected her, others feared her, but none dared challenge her again, not after what she did to those Marines. Yet there was one man who still doubted, Sergeant Hale, the strongest, most decorated fighter in the camp. He didn't believe in ghosts or miracles, and he wasn't about to let a silent woman make him look weak. He waited until the final day of the week, during weapons training, to make his move. As the recruits lined up for live drills, he walked past her muttering under his breath, "Let's see how quiet you are when you lose." She ignored him, but inside something flickered. Not anger, not fear, something colder. When the exercise began, Hale fired his shots perfectly, boasting as always. Evelyn, on the other hand, moved through the course like a shadow, each movement deliberate, every trigger pull precise. When it was over, the scoreboard lit up, her accuracy flawless, his second best. The room fell silent. He turned toward her, jaw tight. "You think you're better than me?" he growled. She didn't move, didn't blink. Then slowly she turned and walked away. That was all it took. Hale lunged forward, grabbed her arm. In one motion, she twisted free, flipped him onto his back, and had her boot pressed against his chest before anyone could react. No words, no sound, just silence. The commander stepped in, eyes wide. "That's enough," he barked. Evelyn stepped back, calm as ever, leaving Hale stunned on the floor. Briggs looked at her, and for the first time he saw something more than discipline. He saw restraint born from pain. As she left the range, the recruits moved aside, giving her space. No one laughed anymore. No one dared. That night, Briggs received a call. The line was secure, voice distorted. "You asked about Operation Serpentide," the voice said. "You shouldn't have." Briggs frowned. "Who is Evelyn Cross?" he demanded. The voice paused. "She was the only survivor," it finally replied. "And if she's there, you need to watch her closely." The line went dead. Briggs sat in silence, the weight of the words sinking in. The only survivor. He looked out the window, toward the training yard, where Evelyn was still there, standing under the moonlight, motionless. She wasn't a mystery anymore. She was a warning. The storm rolled in just before dawn. The sky over the training base turned from steel gray to black, rain hammering against metal roofs as thunder rumbled in the distance. The camp had seen storms before, but that morning something felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. Evelyn was already awake. She'd been up for hours, doing pull-ups under the open sky, her uniform soaked, her hands raw. Every drop of rain that hit her skin felt like memory, sharp, cold, real. She wasn't training her body anymore. She was training her control. Because every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her fallen team, the mission, the fire, the silence that followed. Lieutenant Briggs watched her from his office window. The report from last night still lay open on his desk. The classified note repeated in his mind. Evelyn Cross, sole survivor. Operation Serpentide terminated with extreme casualties. He couldn't get one line out of his head. Terminated with extreme casualties. That meant something went horribly wrong. And if she was the only one left standing, he needed to know why. By midday, he called her in again. She entered without hesitation, standing at attention, water dripping from her boots onto the polished floor. He studied her face for a long moment before speaking. "I know about Serpentide," he said finally. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes flickered, a shadow, quickly buried. "You were there, weren't you?" he continued softly. She didn't move. He leaned forward. "You're not just a recruit, Cross. You were part of something black ops, off the books. I need to know what happened." She didn't respond. Just stood there, silent as stone. Briggs sighed and leaned back. Frustration and curiosity tangled in his voice. "You can't hide forever," he muttered. But she only nodded once, turned, and walked out. That night, The camp's power flickered. The storm had cut one of the main lines. In the dark, Evelyn sat alone in the barracks, sharpening her combat knife with slow, precise strokes. The other recruits whispered, nervous. Even the tough ones who used to mock her now kept their distance. There was something unspoken about her, something they all sensed but couldn't explain. A sudden sound broke the silence, a knock on the metal door. It was Briggs. He stepped in holding a file. "You want to keep your secrets? Fine. But if there's any danger connected to you, I need to know. Are we in danger, Cross?" She looked up at him, her eyes calm but distant. For a long moment, there was only the sound of rain. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and traced one word into the condensation on the table. "Yes." Briggs stared at it, his jaw tightening. "Who?" he whispered. But she didn't answer. Hours later, the alarms went off. Red lights flashed through the corridors, boots thudded against the floor, and voices barked orders. The camp was under lockdown. A breach in the perimeter. Unknown figures caught on the surveillance cameras, moving fast, silent, armed. Briggs grabbed his rifle and headed out. The storm raged harder, lightning slicing through the night sky. Recruits scrambled for cover, but Evelyn was already gone. No one saw her leave. She'd vanished into the dark like smoke. Near the edge of the base, the intruders moved with precision. Too much precision. These weren't amateurs. They knew the terrain, the patrol patterns, everything. And when one of them stepped into the light, Briggs' stomach dropped. The emblem on their sleeve, a serpent coiled around a trident, serpent-tied. But that was impossible. That unit was dead. Every member gone, except Evelyn. He radioed command, but before he could speak, the line went dead. A burst of static filled his earpiece, followed by a single whisper, faint, mechanical, female. "They're not here for you." The voice sounded eerily familiar. He froze. It was Evelyn's voice. But how? Out in the rain, the fight began. Muzzle flashes tore through the darkness. The intruders moved like ghosts, each shot deliberate, efficient. But for every move they made, there was someone faster, Evelyn. She emerged from the shadows without a sound, taking them down one by one. Her movements were a blur, strikes, disarms, silent takedowns. No hesitation, no mercy. The last intruder tried to flee. She caught him near the fence, slammed him to the ground, and pinned him there. Briggs arrived moments later, gun raised, breathing hard. "Who are they?" he demanded. The man on the ground laughed weakly. "You think she told you the truth? She's not your soldier. She's ours." Before Briggs could react, Evelyn twisted the man's wrist, and he went still. She stood, rain pouring down her face, eyes distant, haunted. Briggs lowered his weapon slowly. "What the hell does that mean?" he asked. She didn't answer, couldn't, but the look on her face said enough. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to exist. Back in the command room, Briggs replayed the intercepted audio from the intruders. The same voice repeated over and over, "Retrieve the asset, confirm termination." Evelyn Cross was the asset, and the mission wasn't to kill her. It was to bring her back. Later that night, when the chaos settled, he found her standing near the water's edge, staring out into the black waves. He approached quietly. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" he asked. She didn't turn. Instead, she took a small metal tag from around her neck and handed it to him. It wasn't her name, it was a number, K-19. Briggs frowned. "What is this?" he asked. She didn't move, but for the first time, her lips parted. Her voice, hoarse and low, broke through the sound of the rain. "It's what they made me," she whispered. It was the first word she had spoken in almost 2 years. Briggs froze. The sound of her voice, raw, trembling, sent a chill through him. She turned to face him, her expression cold but calm. "They didn't want soldiers," she said slowly, voice cracking. They wanted weapons. Briggs stared, realization dawning. Serpent Tide wasn't just a mission. It was an experiment. Evelyn had been part of a covert operation to create genetically enhanced operatives, soldiers trained to suppress pain, emotion, even fear. When the project went rogue, they erased all traces of it, killing everyone involved, except her. She survived, but at a cost. Her throat injury wasn't just from shrapnel, it was punishment. They took her voice to keep her silent. She looked away, her eyes distant. "They think I still belong to them," she said softly. "They'll keep coming." Briggs stood there, the rain still falling, realizing the truth. The quiet girl the Marines had laughed at wasn't just a soldier, she was a weapon designed to never stop fighting, never stop surviving. And now she was being hunted by the very people who made her. As thunder rolled across the ocean, Evelyn's gaze hardened. She tied her hair back, picked up her rifle, and started walking toward the training field. Briggs called after her, but she didn't turn. She didn't need to. She'd made her choice. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running from her past. She was walking straight into it. The storm hadn't stopped by morning. The base was quiet, eerily quiet, as if the night before hadn't happened at all. But beneath the calm, tension lingered in every shadow. Soldiers moved in silence, glancing at the perimeter fences, checking weapons twice. They didn't know what was coming, only that something had changed, and that Evelyn Cross was at the center of it. Briggs hadn't slept. He sat in his office, the metal tag she'd given him lying on the desk beside an open report. K-19. The designation alone sent a chill down his spine. He dug deeper into classified archives, finding fragments of the truth buried under years of government silence. Evelyn wasn't the only one. There were others, K-01 through K-18, all terminated. She was the last one alive, the only one that worked. Out on the field, she trained alone, every motion sharper than before, every strike more precise. There was no emotion in her face, only focus. She knew they would come again. They always did. The storm had bought her one night, nothing more. She could feel it, the way the air felt too still, the way birds no longer sang near the fence line. Something was already moving toward them. Briggs approached quietly. "You should rest," he said. She didn't stop. "They'll come tonight," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. He frowned. "How do you know?" She looked up at him, eyes cold. "Because I would." At dusk, the alarm screamed again, but this time, the attack wasn't subtle. Explosions lit up the eastern wall, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sky burned orange and red as shadows poured in through the smoke. Black-clad figures, moving in formation. Evelyn was already there before anyone else. She didn't wait for orders. She didn't need them. Gunfire ripped through the rain. She moved through it like wind, rolling between cover, picking off targets with terrifying precision. The recruits tried to follow, but none could match her. It wasn't just training, it was instinct, something deeper, older. Every motion told a story of years spent surviving the impossible. Briggs watched her fight and felt a knot form in his chest. She wasn't just defending the base, she was confronting everything she'd been running from. Every bullet, every move was a conversation with her past. By midnight, the intruders breached the inner compound. Evelyn met them head-on, no hesitation. One of the attackers, taller, stronger, his movements eerily similar to hers, stepped forward. He wore the same serpent insignia on his chest. When he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled. "K-19, he said, "you were supposed to be terminated." She didn't answer. He smiled faintly. "You were the prototype that worked, the one we couldn't control." He took a step closer. "You think they'll let you live now? You're a weapon that doesn't obey." She lunged before he could finish. The fight was brutal. Precise strikes, counter-strikes, neither gaining ground for long. He was fast, faster than anyone she'd ever fought, a mirror of everything she'd been built to be. Around them, the base burned, sirens wailed, soldiers shouted. But to Evelyn, the world had gone silent again. Just her heartbeat, the sound of rain, and the man in front of her, the ghost of the project she thought she'd escaped. He swung hard. She ducked, countered, and slammed him into a steel beam. He grinned, blood running down his jaw. "You can't kill what you are," he hissed. She hesitated for a moment, eyes flickering with something human. Doubt. That's when he struck, a blade flashing through the stormlight. It sliced across her side, blood blooming dark on her uniform. Briggs saw it happen from across the yard. He shouted her name, the first time anyone at that base had ever done it out loud. She staggered, but didn't fall. The attacker charged again, but this time she moved differently. Slower, deliberate. She caught his arm, twisted, and drove her blade into his chest. His eyes widened in shock. For a brief second, rain and blood mixed on the concrete. He fell, the serpent insignia fading under the downpour. The silence that followed felt endless. She stood there, breathing hard, pain etched across her face. Briggs ran to her, catching her as she stumbled. "It's over," he said quietly, but she shook her head. "No," she whispered, "it's just beginning." The surviving attackers were captured, and the fires began to die. Medical teams rushed through the wreckage, carrying the wounded. Evelyn sat on the edge of the field, rain still falling over her face, eyes fixed on the horizon. Briggs knelt beside her. "They'll come again, won't they?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "They don't stop." He looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't the same woman who'd arrived weeks ago. The silence once made her an outsider, now felt like something sacred. Every action, every decision, had come from that quiet. "You don't have to run anymore," he said softly. "You've done enough." She turned to him, her voice faint but steady. "I was never running," she said. "I was waiting." "For what?" She looked out toward the sea, where the storm was finally breaking apart. "For someone to believe I was more than what they made me." For the first time, Briggs didn't see a soldier. He saw a survivor. A woman who had been turned into a weapon and somehow found her way back to being human. Days passed. The government arrived, took over the cleanup, and sealed off the files again. Evelyn was summoned for debriefing, but never showed up. Her quarters were empty. No trace, no note, just the metal tag left behind on her bunk, K-19 scratched out with a blade, replaced by a single word: Echo. Months later, Briggs received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a photograph of a coastal village somewhere in South America. Children running near the docks. In the background, a woman in a gray jacket, watching the sea, her face half turned, her expression calm, peaceful. It was her, Evelyn Cross. He smiled faintly, folded the photo, and placed it in his desk. The world would never know what happened at that base. The official reports called it a training malfunction. The names of the fallen never made the news, but sometimes when he heard the wind move through the trees, he swore he could almost hear her voice. Faint, distant, steady. Some said she disappeared forever. Others believed she still watched from the shadows, guarding those who couldn't guard themselves. But the commander knew better. She wasn't gone. She was finally free. Because Evelyn Cross, the quiet girl they once laughed at, had taught the world one final lesson: that silence isn't weakness, it's power. And some echoes never fade.